Probably for the last 10 years, everyone's been waiting for the television ad spend to collapse into the online ad spend. And I think there's a couple things that have come up that have matured around that issue, particularly in the last year. Number one, it's the TV ad spend's not going away. Clearly, television's held up well. But the digital advertising and measurement techniques are starting to invade television. And the kind of accountability that has happened on the web, and impression-based counting and measurement and return on investment accountability and an expectation of audience-based targeting and potentially addressability are all topics that have come from the online world and are expected to find their place in TV today. And so I think that, television, as I tell people, it operates on annual cycles. In the online world, it's almost like daily cycles. TV doesn't sort of reevaluate itself but for once a year. And now in the last couple of months, there's a lot of talk now about the allocation of budgets to addressable. I mean, we're hearing some companies like Starcom and some other agencies have been making some not insignificant investments, in the tens of millions of dollars into addressable, some of the satellite companies. I think that's a good start. We're also seeing, and I think it was a big story in the last couple of weeks in the Obama campaign, on their use of set-top box data to better identify their target voters they were trying to reach in non-intuitive and counterintuitive spots, many of which were spots no one really cared about, like overnight spots or midday spots, and targeting their ads in there. They were trying to bring a much tighter direct marketing kind of science to TV. We just saw, I think this morning, Rentrack released data talking about the effect of Hurricane Sandy on the viewing in New York area households. And historically, with relatively modest or small sample sizes, something as catastrophic as a storm, which could potentially, with power outages, have knocked off a quarter of the sample, we basically would have wiped out the sample's accuracy for the whole storm. But now that we have set-top box data, Rentrack can step in and say, hey, we actually have really accurate viewing on what occurred in that time period. So I think we're seeing a real wave of next-generation, data-driven, technology-driven innovation coming into TV advertising. There's not a question that you can deliver some extraordinary effectiveness by delivering the right ad to the right person at the right time. The question is, how can you afford to do that efficiently at scale? It starts with, is the buying community ready? Now in the online world, we had real-time dynamic addressable ads by behavior available in majority of the ad servers in 1997. But yet that wasn't even 3% of online ad spend 10 years later in 2007. Today it's probably 20 or 30%. So for 10 years, even though the technology was there, the market wasn't. So it could take a while for the market to adopt and be prepared to buy that way. The other thing is that it's not a classic advertiser behavior. It's a direct marketer behavior. So I do think one of the things that we're going to see with the Dish and Direct, Verizon, and Cablevision that have early offerings and addressable, I think that probably their early targets and discussions will be around the folks with the freestanding inserts, the coupons, the more classic direct marketers, where they may get more traction. But we'll see. I also think the notion of creative versioning among the brand advertisers, which is using the addressability not to deliver a different advertiser to different people, but a different creative for the same advertiser. And potentially an advertiser that has a range of products, whether that's American Express with green, gold and platinum cards, or whether that's Procter & Gamble with different offerings. Finally, one of the real challenges for the media owner is in the television world, you've never had to worry about really the notion of inventory yield management except in a very simple way, which is take your really scarce stuff, The Voice, American Idol, Hawaii Five-0, sell it at a really high price and package a bunch of other stuff with it that people may not otherwise want, but they're going to have to take to get it. And then what you can't sell that way, keep off of the market by dumping it into direct response. That was a pretty good inventory yield management strategy. Pretty simplistic, but efficient, and it worked. When you start getting to addressable, every time you address an ad to one household, you have every other household in that footprint for that program that needs an ad too. And it's a new way of thinking. And in the online world, it took years a dozen years before we developed probably even very passable inventory yield management systems. It's really the ad networks, the ad servers, companies like YieldX have now probably really nailed. And so it's going to take a whole new way of thinking for television sellers and inventory owners to decide how they are going to manage their inventory when some can be cherry-picked for addressable, some can be sold on a geographic zone basis, some can be sold on an audience basis, some will be sold on a program basis or a network basis or a day part. And that's a lot of complexity into a marketplace that has actually been incredibly profitable because it doesn't have complexity. It's probably the strength of the television economic model is its simplicity.